Hey everyone, how's it going? Michael Linehan here, and I just wanted to, in this video, discuss a little bit about why I think most diets fail and the approach I take when it comes to my coaching, and why I think it is a recipe for long term success. So, I guess if I was to take you back through a journey of myself, I've struggled with both obesity and extreme dieting, which bordered, I suppose, on a little bit of anorexia in my early 20s, late teens. And I guess I've learned a lot along the way in terms of what worked, what didn't work, and what has been continuing to work for me over the last few years, where I've pretty much stabilized my body fat whilst also gaining lean muscle mass in the process. So let's have a look at, let's say, where you're starting from. You may be a bit overweight. You may also be what might be termed skinny fat, where you are, by all accounts thin from where most people would view you in clothes, but you are definitely carrying a bit of excess body fat, can't really see much muscle definition. The way most coaches would approach this is with the traditional bulk cut model, right? So when you're in a cut or a deficit, you're in a caloric deficit, eating less calories than you expend, and the law of thermodynamics, yes, would state that you will lose weight because you're in a negative energy balance. On the other side, you've got a bulk, which is a surplus, calorie surplus. So you spend an extended period of time in a surplus in a bid to gain muscle mass. And in order to reach your ideal physique, you're actually going to have to go through different periods of being in a surplus or a deficit multiple times to actually achieve the physique that you want. However, I think that it's vastly oversimplified with the way most coaches would approach this. It's taking something that works very well in the bodybuilding industry and thinking that it can be applied to everybody. And I think that it's really not applicable to most people unless they've already got a large muscular frame. Even myself, I don't follow the traditional bulk cut model, and I probably won't for many years to come, because I simply just don't have the frame by which I need to bulk in excess just to add a few extra pounds of muscle. And similarly, I don't really have any need to get to single digit body fat percentage. I'm probably sitting somewhere in and around the 10 to 12, maybe even a little bit higher, but I mean, you can still see abs quite clearly. I mean, I can see veins in my lower abs. I'm quite lean in terms of your average person. So I really think the traditional bulk up model is not very applicable, and I'll go into more detail why. So let's just take, for example, a calorie deficit. So the way most coaches would think about this is you have an equation of what you should be eating depending on your body weight, things like your muscle mass. Height is brought into it in some, but it's actually really not a determinant of how many calories you need to eat. And also gender, age, all those factor into how many calories you should be eating in a day. And what a coach will traditionally do is, okay, well then let's knock off a certain amount of calories per day, which brings someone up to an average of, let's say, 3,500 calorie deficit in a week to try and burn a pound of body fat. The reason I think that is flawed is because over time, what you're training the body to do is to actually lower its metabolic rate. When calories the calories in part of the equation go down, so too does calories out. So anything that you expend in just basic movements, like me sitting here, moving my arms, the way I kind of rock side to side a bit, I've even noticed that as my calories have incrementally gone up, I've gotten more active, more hyper. I can actually I feel good, I can do more things. So when you're in a deficit, and especially over a prolonged period of time, your body will actually make unconscious decisions for you to lower the amount of calories you expend. So I think really the middle of the road approach lies in what would be termed in bodybuilding or the fitness community right now is what would be called a recomp. So a recomp would be where you have a very shallow deficit. So it still allows you to make the best use of your calories for building muscle, but then you're still losing weight, it's just at a much slower rate. But what I find happens is actually you will see that your body fat will actually go down at a very similar rate to what it would be in a traditional cut, but you're building extra muscle. And remember, if you build muscle, lean muscle mass, that actually over time increases your metabolic rate. It increases the amount of calories that you can even just consume and burn at rest. So even if you're just lying on a couch doing nothing for a weekend, you're going to burn more calories than the person who didn't build that same amount of muscle. And then how that fits in, I guess, to the overall bulk cut cycle, right? So typically somebody would approach a cut where they get to their ideal body fat percentage. They're miserable while they're dieting because they're in such a high deficit, but they're really happy with their appearance and their body image, let's say, right? Then on the flip side, you've got the bulk where they want to gain a bit of muscle. They're really happy in terms of the hormonal benefits and the calories they're consuming and the extra yumminess, but the surplus is, in my mind, most times it's too high. And then you're actually depressed because you've got a negative body image. You can't even see the muscle you're building because the rate of fat gain you're going to have is going to be, way bigger than the amount of muscle that you're building. You lose all definition. You actually get a bit despondent, and it makes it very difficult to actually commit to a bulk. So I think that this model is actually broken. It only really applies if, say, for example, I was walking around 90 kilos, I had tapped out my, genetic limits almost tapped them out of what I could achieve over a lifetime. And I was saying, look, I really just want to get an extra bit of weight on the bar. I really want to get stronger. And I really want to just see if I can add maybe even a pound or two over the next year. That's where, the traditional bulk may be applicable. I'm not even convinced that it is. And then the traditional cut, as I said, it's taking people through these really long cycles of feeling either depressed about their food and happy about their body, or depressed about their body and happy about their food. And I just don't think that it's the correct way at all. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I did this year for myself, and it really was kind of based on a lot of the logical way I would have thought about this, but I never actually implemented just because it was so counterculture. The way I approach my diet now is I first off in January this year, right, I had gotten back to kind of skinny fat. I was out of training for a few months because I was on the road quite a bit. I had a lot of excess body fat, and coming into January this year, I thought, you know what, I was in a bad enough place anyway because I'd just gone through a breakup. I was heartbroken, and I was saying, I really don't think that I'm able to do this, cut, or to I couldn't even think about the, having to resist the calories that I was eating and all this. So I thought, I'm just going to focus on the fundamentals of my training, and I'm going to enter into a very shallow deficit, just a recomp. So I actually ate at or around maintenance, or what I thought was at or around maintenance, pushed for progressive overload in the gym. My maintenance became a deficit because I was now, building more lean muscle mass. My body was expending more energy, and then I started to slowly lose body fat. As I started to slowly lose body fat, and I got to what I would have thought was more of an ideal physique for me, I was not as lean as I am right now, and I was at it around 2,600 calories a day. So then I decided, okay, what I'm going to do there is I'm going to slowly bump up my calories over time. So I started by going up to 2,800. And then the next week, if I didn't see a shift in weight and the scales going up, I went up by another 200. I'm now at a point where I'm maintaining my body mass. This is only 6-7 months later, I'm maintaining my body mass of 3,600 calories a day. If I want to gain a bit of muscle, I go to 4,000. If I want to lose a bit of fat, I go to 3,200, which is still a really high amount of calories to be losing weight or losing body fat. And the way I structure it is I cycle, very short cycles. So I'll go into a 4,000 calorie state for maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Then I'll drop it back to 3,200 for, maybe 2 weeks. I might even spend a week in the 3,600 mark. But what it's meant for me is that I have complete food freedom. I actually struggle to fit in the amount of calories that I need in a day, just to even maintain, never mind to actually gain muscle mass or to gain weight. And then in terms of losing weight, 3,200 calories, I don't even notice that I'm cutting, because that's still so much food to the average person. That's like a bad Friday or Saturday. Now, obviously, drink will completely throw that off. But what I just try and do is, honestly, most weeks I work maybe 1 or 2 drinks. If I feel like it, I don't drink every night, but if I do feel like a drink, I work it into my total calorie intake. And then about once a month, I'll just have like everyone, a drinking session where you go a little bit overboard and you don't really care. You just accept it and move on. But that has seemed to work for me. If I could, I'll probably just show the condition I'm in right now. So this is morning, the lighting is shit, but I am fairly lean. And I would say that for the vast majority of people who really do just want to, lean up, gain a bit of muscle mass, I really don't think the bulk cut model is setting you up for any long-term success. You also have to factor in that when you do cut, not only do calories go down, but you're also going to mess up your hormones a little bit. So there's 2 key hormones which relate to how much you're going to be driven to eat, leptin and ghrelin. So leptin is the hormone that signals that you've had enough, that you're full. That starts to shut off in prolonged periods of weight loss. Ghrelin then is the hunger hormone that will go up. So if you ever feel like you're going really well on a diet, you're losing loads of weight, you're eating, let's say, the clean foods, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, and then you get to maybe 6 weeks in, 4 weeks in, it depends really, you get an evening where you just, it's like you lash out, you go on autopilot and you're eating and you cannot stop eating. Well, that's not really you or your conscious mind. That is these hormones which are banging on your head saying eat, eat, eat. You are starving. Eat. Overconsume. And then your body is actually primed to store that excess body fat, or those excess calories as body fat. And as you store more body fat, let's say you what they call body fat overshoot, right? So you've prolonged period of dieting, you eat in excess then of the rebound, you end up gaining more weight. Well, you've actually added more fat cells, and fat cells never actually disappear. Fat cells, they hang around, and then they are actually signaling those hormones. So anytime you try and diet again, you've more fat cells now shutting off ghrelin, shutting off leptin, signaling more ghrelin, which is going to make it harder and harder over time. I really believe that the approach is going to be somewhere in shallow deficits to lose weight, having periods of maintenance where you actually just cut back into maintaining your weight to level out your hormones again, and then going back into a deficit again. What we're in the game of here is a few things. Long-term success, flexibility in your diet, improving the metabolism, and actually also trying to circumvent the law of diminishing returns. If you're not familiar with law of diminishing returns, if I'm drinking my cup of coffee here, this is my second cup today, I'm not going to get the same buzz off it that I got off the first cup. By the time I get to the 6th cup, I'm actually just seeing negative benefits in terms of my concentration, my scatteredness, and dehydration. So the benefits, not only do the benefits diminish over time, but they actually turn into negative consequences. So if we think about that in the context of dieting down, you're going to have a certain amount of benefits you're going to see for a few weeks. They're going to slowly level off as calories out go down, and then eventually it's actually going to turn into negative benefits where your hormonal response is going to be so much that you're going to end up putting on more body fat than what you started with in the beginning. And this is actually why 95% of most diets fail. And that is been well proven in the, I suppose, empirical evidence that 95% of diets do fail. There was actually a study done on the contestants of The Biggest Loser. I don't know if you remember that TV series in America, where people go into these kind of boot camps for over the course of a few weeks, few months. Not only do they lose so much weight so quickly during the show, but they also regain it at a greater rate. So most of the contestants that were studied, and I mean the vast majority of them, I think it was about a year down the line, they were heavier than when they first went on the show. So really, when it comes to dieting, don't go for the short-term goals. Set realistic ones. And even in my own case, if you want to use me as a case study, I mean, my body fat percentage was way higher, and within about 6 months, I went for the short returns in terms of losing body fat percentage and I can now say that over this past 6 months, I have been the most consistent I've ever been with my training and nutrition. I've gotten the best results I've ever seen with my training and nutrition, and I do believe that this is something I can carry forward for the rest of my life because it is so easy for me to maintain. So if you'd like to learn more, I am launching my coaching business this year. Please do get in touch. You can get in touch with me at linahinm92@gmail.com. Is to give them the tools and the education that they need so that they can track for themselves. I don't do meal plans. I basically operate online. I'll do a very basic fitness and nutrition plan for you, which takes into account what you should be eating in terms of your protein intake, fiber, carbohydrate, fat. I then coach you on how you can track that yourself, and my role really is in checking in with you, seeing how you're doing in terms of mindset, seeing how you're doing in terms of whether you should be adjusting your calories up or down, and it's all with a view of improving the metabolism, getting you to your ideal physique over time so that you can maintain it over time. Thanks very much. Make sure to subscribe to the channel.